fadeaway with a hand in his face in the air for the win! Yes, sir! Garnett gives Minnesota the win at Target Center! Towns rebound, lets it fly, and Karl-Anthony Towns drills it at the buzzer! A catastrophic finish for the Grizzlies!
Welcome to the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast, your home for the best Wolves talk around.
Wiggins spots up there, deep threes, got it! He scores it at the buzzer to give the Timberwolves the victory!
Welcome into another episode of the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. I am your host, Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how you doing?
I'm surviving as a Wolves fan.
That's all you can do. And we are also joined by Jared Good. Jared, how we doing?
Doing well. Tonight didn't go as planned, but I saw some things that I liked.
Good. And let's start with that. Your Minnesota Timberwolves, they end, well, I guess our week in a sense. They end the week with a 108-120 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. So let's start with you, Jared. What did you see out of the Wolves? What did you see that you liked out of the Wolves tonight?
I didn't catch as much of the second half, but in the first half, I really loved the energy that Naz Reid played with. Not only was he making shots, but he looked like as fast as I've ever seen him look. And Naz had some contested shots, and I was just really impressed what I saw with Naz Reid in the short run that he got in the first half this evening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Chris, what did you see tonight? What did you see out of the Wolves?
I mean, I saw a team that just doesn't have as much talent as it needs to win consistently. You know, Beasley was like 2 for 12 today. That's going to happen when you're a shooter. Sometimes you're going to miss shots. Edwards was electric, like he was with Rubio out, which hurt bad. There was so many open cutters, like I've mentioned a couple of times, Chris Finch really, really pushes cutting. And we had in the first half 4 or 5 and 2 or 3 in the second half, guys that were wide open under the hoop that were just missed. And like the pass was there. It wasn't like it was blocked, it doesn't look, it just was missed. So, I mean, it was just kind of an all-around sloppy game. Maybe some of it was that we're playing the 76ers tomorrow. But like Jared said, Naz looked good. And the reason why Naz looked good is because he is really good. Like, he's just a good basketball player. But like you said, he looked fast. He was really hustling down court a lot today. And, he was actually attacking the rim like – he's been doing a lot of like layups. He's kind of like that Jelly Fam out of New York kind of thing, but he was dunking the ball, and he was like, even after the plays, going for big rebound dunks. Like, he was just playing way more athletic. But he's a stud. We're going to have to find a way to get him and Cat together on the court more often. And we've only really done it when the matchup is best for us right now, when it's 2 bigs. But I think it's time to be like, you know what? Let them match up with us. Like, Naz can move enough to cover most, 4s. I mean, there's going to be some that are going to kill him, and that's fine. Then we don't have to play him so much. But let some little 4 deal with Naz in the post. Like, Naz has got good post game, and he's a battler on the rebound. Like, we're going to have to. Naz deserves 20 to 25 minutes a game, and he's been getting some games where he's getting like, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, and we don't have enough talent on this roster to be giving a talented player like him 8 minutes. So that was big, just missing cutters. We didn't look like we were really in sync, but that'll happen when your number 1 and your number 2 point guard are gone. We just didn't have enough talent. It was a scrappy game of runs, and we came out on the bad side of some of those runs.
Absolutely. And I think what we also got to mention is, I mean, the guy who's always going to be there for you, Karl-Anthony Towns, man, he has been tearing it up on the boards. I believe he had 17 against the Knicks, and then 16 tonight. He's been tearing it up on the boards. Finishes with 30 points, and just a huge game for him. I feel like the guy on the Memphis Grizzlies though that always kills us is Valanciunas, and he just seems to get every rebound. He had 11 tonight, and he just seems to kill us on the offensive boards. But go ahead, Chris. What you got?
I just wanted to point out it was the 10th game in a row that we fell down by 15 points. So that's always fun. So, I mean, it just shows, and I think in the last 3 games, I think 2 of them we won. In the last 3 games, I think the most, including this game, so last 4 games, I think the most we've been ahead is 2 points. So,
right.
Those who are worried about us winning too many games to fall out of our draft pick, or at least in the range of getting that first pick, I don't think you have to worry too much.
Right. And some that I want to mention, just looking at the box score from the Memphis Grizzlies, they look like the definition of the word balance tonight. Dylan Brooks, 12 points. Valanciunas, 19. Ja Morant, 11 and 7. Grayson Allen, 15. Brandon Clark, 11. Melton, 14. Tillman, 12. And Tyus Jones, 11. When you have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players in double figures, that's going to bode pretty well for you.
Every game.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead, Jared. You had something?
Yeah, we're gonna backtrack here a second. Just talking about Towns again. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned that Towns under Finch looks a little bit different, and more so like the way the offense is running through him. And I compared him to Nikola Jokic. And if you look at like his stat models in the past few games, they almost mirror Jokic's numbers before Aaron Gordon got there. He's come down a little bit now that Aaron Gordon is there, just solely on his usage rate changing a little bit. But one thing that I thought that was super interesting when like looking back at that comparison is I believe Chris said that Jokic started under Finch in a assistant role. So this guy can get his star player the ball, and he's going to continue to get his star player the ball and run the offense through him. And Cat is like one thing about Jokic that so many people that fall in love with is his ability to pass the ball. I think Karl Anthony Towns has just as good as an ability to pass the ball when he's getting doubled and triple teamed, because it's going to happen. And I just feel like looking back at that comparison, I think it's like more so in the last week or two, it's really kind of like come to fruition with how true it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. See, Cat, here's the thing. Cat has like some signature passes. He has the one where he like goes right behind his head to the guy. And then he has the one where he like holds it down by his legs and then tries to like zip it cross court. And I know like the announcers like basically say that he should stop doing that, but I don't know. I think it looks pretty cool. But yeah, go ahead, Chris.
The good thing about Cat is opposed to Jokic is probably, I mean, I would say he's probably a better passer, but he also passes it. He takes way more chances. Like Jokic is averaging or at least he was like 5 turnovers a game. Like that's something that Cat doesn't do. He's a little bit more, prudent with his passing. Finch said in his last presser that they were talking about Cat really upping his shots, and he said, almost no matter what, Cat's going to make the right play. Even if it's, like the right pass, even when he should maybe shoot when it's not the right play. Cat's just that guy. And it goes back to a couple of weeks ago, Gabe, when you asked, is Cat going to be that guy who takes over? And I mean, I think it comes down to when that's the right thing to do, when they're doubling, D'Lo or doubling Ant, he will. But he's not going to force it, and he's the guy that will always be making the right play, which is going to end up being the superstar move that's best for this roster, because we're now filling it up with other guys that can contribute. So it's going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be fun when this is all put together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's all on the Grizzlies game. Just kind of an ugly game. It's the first game of a back-to-back, knowing that tonight you have to fly to Philadelphia and take on the Philadelphia 76ers tomorrow, which is never easy. Let's talk about the Wolves. We talked about a huge comeback last week, and this week we get to talk about another one, because the Minnesota Timberwolves outscored the New York Knicks 22-9 in crunch time in order to get a 102-101 win over the New York Knicks. And let's start with you, Jared. What was the kind of the key to that Wolves comeback, that huge comeback by the Wolves?
So I didn't see a ton of this game because I was at work at the time, but I was kind of following along, and I kind of saw some post-game stuff about it. And I really loved what Anthony Edwards, I don't know if it was a Twitter thing but he said something about how fitting it was to go up against RJ Barrett at the end of the game and come out to be a victor, almost kind of like a passing of the torch. Maybe that's not the right phrase, because I think Anthony Edwards is a lot better than RJ Barrett. But I thought that was super interesting, like how like he takes note, like not only with his own team and winning games, but like he always has something to say about it. And he's also pretty intelligent with what's going on in the league. And it really kind of just made me like kind of tip my hat to Edwards. Like, you know what, like you're paying attention and you're going to be a star and you're doing all the right things. And I noticed tonight he even got a couple calls. It was more in the third quarter. There was one call that he got where I was like, oh, really? That's the one that got called? Because he never gets called. He never gets calls. But the league is starting to come around to Anthony Edwards, in my opinion. And just to like look at tonight's game quickly, like Michael Beasley, or not Michael Beasley, Malik Beasley, when he goes 2 for 12 and plays 28 minutes and has 5 points, you're just not going to win games on this team. This team right now is centered around 3 players, especially with our injuries and D'Lo being out. But like if we don't get 70 from Cat, Edwards, and Beasley, we're just not going to win, unfortunately. And that there's just nothing we can do about that because we're not that talented of a scoring team outside of those 3.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And kind of going back to the Wolves comeback, Chris, what did you see out of the Wolves in crunch time against the Knicks? I
mean, Jaden McDaniels was a monster. He's that guy. Like it's funny. Tonight he was super ineffective because the Grizzlies don't really have a guy that you're afraid of on the perimeter, like they've got, like you said, everyone was scoring 10. So it's like, well, who's their star? You lock him down. Like, I guess maybe we could have put him on Ja, but Ja locked himself down enough tonight. But, there wasn't much for him today, but he was a monster. The guy can play D on anybody. And he really hassled Randall. I mean, that was fun to see. But the thing that really two things stuck out to me is for some reason we go into the fourth quarter. We're getting kicked, and Culver's starting the fourth quarter for some reason. And he airballs a wide open corner 3. And this is something they talked about on the telecast is when you see a guy make a bad defensive play, Finch will like fire up his backup and pull him off the bench and he said it's almost like an umpire in baseball ringing a guy up for 3 strikes. He's like, all right, this guy messed up, he's out. It was the same thing with Culver. He just airmails this 3-pointer. And all of a sudden you see a couple guys run up off the bench. And then the next possession down, Cat has, I think it was like a small forward just buried in the post. And Culver just couldn't get him the ball. Perfect, it wasn't like it was a perfect position to get a nice post feed, just couldn't get it, ends up driving and missing a layup. And that was the end of his night. But then after that, Edwards comes in and we pretty much go pick and roll Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards over and over and over again, which I don't know. It's kind of like when Flip Saunders was playing Zach LaVine, and he kept having him do stuff he was bad at in important times so that he gets better at it. Like we're building Anthony Edwards right now. Like we don't really care if we win or lose these games. We're building this talent. And on dribble handoffs, Anthony Edwards is like 90th percentile, like tops, elite in the league in scoring. And on isolation, he's elite in the league in scoring. But on pick and roll ball handler, he's like 30 percentile. Like he's pretty bad right now, or throughout the year. He's getting better, obviously, just because he's getting better. But that pick and roll just destroyed the Knicks. And in his post game, he said, I figured out what they were doing. They were fake trapping me. Like they would come like they're going to trap me and they wanted me to give the ball up, but they wouldn't really trap me. They'd back off. He's like, so I figured that out. So halfway through, I would just kind of hesitate and they'd back off and then he'd attack again. And just for a 19-year-old kid to analyze Tibbs' defense and break it down mid-game, midstream in Madison Square Garden and lead us to a win, I mean, the kid's special.
Yeah. I mean, compared to what I was doing at age 19, I mean, yeah, it's night and day comparison. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, also Jane McDaniel's 19 as well. So we have two 19-year-olds on this.
He's 20.
Oh, he's 20?
I think coach was wrong on that. I think this is his second year of being 19.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I was going to say about Edwards before we move on in that game, like I said, I didn't see a ton of the game. I was at work. But one thing, like you guys know that I look at a lot of box scores and stuff, but it was interesting to me to see that Edwards had 3 steals and 3 blocks because that's not something that's normally in his repertoire, but he's normally just a volume scoring shooter, but he must have played a little bit of defense in that game.
Well, steals, I think he's got 17 games in a row with a steal right now. Which is a rookie record for the Timberwolves. And I thought it was leading the NBA right now in games in a row. He jumped in the fourth quarter. He kind of like played center field, like strong safety and jumped a pass and got it. And then another one and got a dunk on that. And then another one, Eldrin Payton got an offensive rebound and was just it was weird. Like he was in traffic. Yeah. And he was just kind of like lazily dribbling up to the top, and Edwards was like zink, and he's down the court, man. I don't know what that was about, but no, it was huge. And those two plays were like both late in the fourth quarter. I mean, it was massive. And Edwards had a couple blocks, or at least I didn't check the box score, but I thought he had a couple blocks tonight. Like. He's rebounding better. He had a huge offensive tip in, like rebound in that Knicks game. Like he's gonna be that all around monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like you were saying, the Elfrid Payton, I will say in this game, made a couple dumb plays towards the end. Like he made some bad passes. Like I don't know on that Edwards steal. I don't know what he was doing. Like he was just dribbling to no abandon.
It looked like it was almost like they're like, okay, check it back up top. And he's like, okay. And he's just like slowly dribbling back up top.
Yeah, it was weird. And when you look at, I mean, a 102 to 101 game, I mean, that could be the difference of winning and losing in that kind of game. So, I mean, heads up play for Edwards, but I mean, if I was a Knicks fan, I would be pissed at Elfrid Payton. But I do want to say on that note, and I was mentioning this to the guys before, there's this YouTube, there's this thing on YouTube where it's like a Knicks, they do like a Knicks pregame and postgame, and it's not like done by like Yes Network or anything. It's done by like individual people, and they're basically on a Zoom call and they're talking about the Knicks. And I was watching the postgame of the Knicks, and they were basically saying the same things we were saying when Tibbs was here. They were saying they were overplaying Randall. This is Tibbs' fault. And they were basically blaming their front office. So it sounded pretty familiar. Like,
and Tibbs has a lot of pull in that front office.
Mm-hmm.
I think not to defend Tibbs because I'm not a Tibbs guy, but But I also think that's why the Knicks are a lot better this year. You know, like I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts before, but their previous coach, there might have been one in between, but they had Damian Fizdale, who played like everyone 21 minutes or 20 minutes, and no one got any run, and everyone was just kind of like, what the hell? We're just out here playing 20 minutes, and then we go to the bench, and the stars didn't really excel. But like with a guy like Randall can be a star in this league, and I think that makes
He has been, yeah.
I think that makes a big difference, like getting extra run and playing 30-some minutes a game. You don't have to do it every single night and beat their knees into the ground like Tibbs seems to always do. But at the same point in time, I also think that's why they've excelled.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that, but and this is why I hate old coaches on young teams, because you have two different timelines. Like, what's Tibbs' timeline in his career? He needs to win now. He's trying to build a resume, you know, for maybe Hall of Fame or whatever. He's trying to do that. So, like, how many minutes is Obi Toppin playing? Like, I'm not a big Obi Toppin fan. I actually thought he was kind of junk, but he's 23 years old. So he's not like he's a young kid. And the dude's hardly getting any run because he's playing these starters 117 minutes a game. So, like, okay, are the Knicks going to win the title this year? No. Absolutely not. So would you rather, who knows, maybe even miss the playoffs, but or maybe sneak into the playoffs, but give Obi Toppin 25 minutes a game so maybe he can develop into a future star? Or would you rather bury him on the bench and play I forget who that dude with the funny floppy hair in front, who's just a journeyman shooter. Like
Pollock.
Yeah, like what do you like? I mean, they're not the same spot, but like, you got to get these young kids run. Like, you're building for the future, Tibbs. You're not trying to win a title right now. But I don't know what.
And see, I think Obi Toppin is averaging anywhere from 8 to 14 minutes, and 14 is like a lot for him right now, which seems super bizarre for a rookie. But like at the same point in time, like if I'm an NBA coach and I have this job security because I keep winning, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe Tibbs just doesn't care much, other than he's still collecting paychecks.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. He got fired for doing the same stuff once. He might get it again, but I guess he gets his whole contract paid out, so he's cool with that.
Well, okay, I will say this with the Knicks post game. They weren't necessarily saying like, oh, they play Randall too much before the game, because I also chipped in for the pregame. So maybe it was a little like, oh, we lost the game. We don't want to blame the players. Let's blame Thibodeau. But to answer some of your questions, the past two games he played 9 minutes against the Wolves and then 11 minutes tonight in a loss to the Mavericks. And both of them were close games, so they were kind of indicative of what a typical game would look like for the New York Knicks. So I don't know.
We don't have to talk about the Knicks forever because this isn't the Knicks podcast. But like a guy like Chris was saying, young talent, Emmanuel Quickly, very talented player, but they have Elfrid Payton, Derrick Rose. I believe there was somebody else at a point in time that was getting a little bit of run over him. And I'm like,
Austin Rivers.
Yeah, Austin Rivers. We were just talking about him. And it's like, dude, when are you going to develop your players? That's what, like, as a Timberwolves fan, we can sit here and talk about how frustrating this season is. But I don't think that any of us would say we aren't developing our players. Like, Edwards has made big strides for me. And I was kind of hard on Edwards for not finishing at the rim and not getting some calls and just being kind of inefficient. But in the past 3 weeks, he hasn't been any of that. Like, he's starting to fix it. And that's a perfect thing you want to see on I don't know, what are we, 13 and 30 something?
We are 13 and 36, 37. So the best we can finish is 39 and 37. So if we win the rest of our games, we'll be above 500.
There we go.
So it could happen. I did a predictions video at the beginning of the season and this was obviously before Cat went down. This is before D'Lo went down. This is before everything happened. I did have us at 39 and 37, so it could happen. I don't know.
On the table.
Right. Could you imagine? If we go on a 20-game winning streak, that would be unbelievable. So let's turn the tables. Let's change it from Knicks talk to let's look at D'Angelo Russell. We don't necessarily know his timeline, but he has been practicing with the team. We expect him back sometime soon. So let's ask this: what will be the biggest adjustment for the Timberwolves in the way that they are operating now when you insert D'Lo back into the lineup, or do you think there won't be much of an adjustment at all? Let's start with you, Chris.
I think it's going to be tough, and I think we're going to have a couple losses because of it. I mean, a couple games, we can always have losses, but a couple games that we might have squeaked out that will end up being losses just because, every week we've got a new starter coming in trying to fit with the system. And this is a high impact starter. This is a ball dominant starter. I think Rubio is going to be interesting to see how it works because it seemed like there wasn't a great vibe between those two early on. But D'Lo has to start, in my opinion. So that's going to be some balls for Anthony Edwards that he's not going to have to be able to create with. But like Edwards said when he was sitting in his post-game interview with Beasley, once we get us all back, who are you going to double? How are you going to double Cat when you've got, he said when you've got Beasley and you've got D'Lo out there, knockdown shooters, and then you go throw it to me, and he said, I'm going to get there. I'm going to figure it. Even with him, he's that hammer. You kick it to him, and if you're running at Anthony Edwards to contest a 3-pointer, that's a blow by, and somebody's gonna have a snotty nose call to his mom by getting dunked on. It's gonna be trouble. It's just gonna be fun to see. I don't even care what happens. I just want to see this team back together. Give me a lineup of D'Lo, Edwards, D'Lo, Beasley, Edwards, McDaniel, Cat. Give me that for 15 games and just run it. Let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing, like when we talk about how our starting lineups are juggled, and one thing that we can keep an eye on. So we have all seen Cat excel, and I think that one thing that we should mention here is usage rates are going to change. You're not going to see Beasley shooting 15 to 18 shots a game with those 4 on the floor basically, but. Also, I think D'Lo is going to come in on a little bit of a minutes restriction, which might actually benefit us because we won't be completely discombobulated. He'll probably play 18 to maybe most 22 minutes to start, but it's definitely going to change things up a little bit. But I don't think that having I don't think anybody in this room, virtual room that we have here, but none of us are going to disagree that adding D'Lo to the floor is going to hurt at all.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, and it really like you were saying, Chris, it's part of Rosas's vision. We haven't seen his vision on the court together as one cohesive unit with games under their belt yet, which is crazy to say because of how long we've had Malik, how long we've had D'Lo. We've almost had D'Lo for a entire calendar year, and how much has he played with Cat? 2 games. How much has he played with Cat?
I think it was 5 or 6, but yeah, not very many, nevertheless.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it might rejuvenate this team a little bit. Like when you're 13 and what did you say, 37? 13 and 37. Like you get down on yourselves when you're playing basketball every night. Can we beat anybody? But when you get the gang back together again, and this is more so looking towards next year. Obviously, we're not doing anything this year, and we've all admitted that for a long time now. But even just having a week or 2 of really good basketball can go a long ways for these young guys' confidence. We gotta remember we're a very, very young team, and confidence is a big thing in basketball, especially when you're young.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The youngest.
Yeah, youngest team in the entire NBA, and that'll help when you have 2 players who are 19 and 20. So when you really have 2 starters that are 19 and 20, so
it's 19 and 19 again, second 19.
So it's like when you cheat on when you cheat on your birth certificate just so you could play in like the lower league. Like,
That's
I'm
Daniel
15,
Monte.
I'm 15U, and then you look
Shabazz
like
Muhammad.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a big story for me growing up was Daniel Monte. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he was a Little League World Series pitcher that was like 16, and he cheated on his birth certificate.
Well, I don't know if you guys remember. Do you guys remember the movie? What was it? Bench Warmers. Oh, you don't remember? Oh, okay. Well, the guy cheats on his it's like this 25-year-old like roided out guy, and he has a he has a birth certificate written in crayon that says I am 12. And then he slips them like $100 and they let him play. So yeah, but yeah. So looking at this at the Wolves roster, of course, as we talked about last week, the Wolves didn't do anything at the trade deadline. They stand pat, which is kind of an interesting thing to do when you're the worst team in the league. But obviously we've had injuries and stuff like that, and I don't think there was much we could do. So I like what you wrote in the outline here, Chris. Kind of, and we'll start with you, Jared. What's next for this roster? Like, what do you see like in the offseason? What do you see being? What do you think are the next steps for this Timberwolves roster? What kind of moves can you see them making in the near future or future?
Well, I've posted a couple of things about this in the True Fans page, but I think our next move is adding a third star, and I still haven't given up on that notion yet. And we talked about it with Aaron Gordon and possible trade news, which obviously didn't work out. But we are not going to have Ricky Rubio on this team next year. No matter, I don't care what anybody says, unless it's at a re-signed very, very minimal contract, which I assume he turns down because he has value league wide. But if you add a top 3 pick, and if it's number 1, you're going to have the tools to, as Chris would say when he puts his GM hat on, is you're going to have the ability to trade for somebody. So I think we're looking at a draft day trade moving forward. I still haven't given up on Ben Simmons. He's not my favorite player in the league, but I think he would still fit here. And I think that Philly is kind of shown that they've been winning games without him, but I mean, they can't beat anybody in a playoff game with him. So it'll be interesting to see. My guy going into the season was Bradley Beal. I don't think that would work out, obviously, because Rubio is a backup point guard basically at this league, and at this point in time, and Westbrook plays the point guard. So I don't think that would work out, but I think there's ability to add a third. I don't know if star is the right word, or a third near max player moving forward when talking about the draft.
Okay. And Chris, what do you think? Do you think the answer is a near max player, a big dip, or just little adjustments and build around Cat, D'Lo, and Anthony Edwards and Beasley? What do you think?
It's tough because part of me is not in love with the idea of 3 near max guys, just because it puts your roster at such a disadvantage. You have to be so good at low value contracts being successful players, which Rosas has proven so far to be, with Nas, with McDaniels, with J-Mac, with all these guys. But I do think that that's what is in the plans. And I think that Ben Simmons is if let's say we get the first, second, third pick, that pick tied with Rubio, it just depends what happens. If Philly falls apart in the playoffs, I could see them being like, okay, that was our last try at this Embiid and Simmons thing. This isn't going to work. I think if they get blown, if they only make it round 1 or round 2, I see them blowing up that team just because they have to. They don't have much choice. But this is what I've been kicking around, and I actually love it. Not only because I thought of it, but I just think it's good. Tell me what you guys would do. So let's say we get the first, second, or third pick. It doesn't really matter in this sense, but it's a quality stud player in this draft that's supposed to be a dominant draft. I'm not sold on that, but either way, would you trade the number 3 pick, my guy Jared Culver, for Michael Porter Jr. and their like 24th pick?
I think the Nuggets turn you down in a heartbeat.
What's that? You think the
I
Nuggets
think the Nuggets turn it down in a heartbeat. Porter is special.
Here's what I don't know about. They're going to hit a point where they're going to be salary capped out too. Porter's going to need a contract coming up in the next 2 years. I think next year he's got like $6 million, but then the year after he's going to be looking for near max, 20 some at least. Right now he's playing, he's 22 years old. He's playing 30 minutes a game. He's scoring 16 points, 8 rebounds, a block a game. And he's shooting 45% from 3 on 5 threes a game. And he's 6'10". Like he can play the power.
Dude's an absolute stud.
He's a stud. And I've been watching his interviews because before I had this take, I wanted to see what he was about. And I know he's had some really crazy things he said on his social media, but interviews wise, he seems like he's a pretty level-headed kid. So if we could let's say we throw some, I don't know if you'd have to put a future, but if you get the number 1 pick, you got Cade Cunningham. That's going to sweeten that deal. That's the kind of guy I would like to see us go after. A guy that's still young, a guy that still has a lot of potential, but maybe not quite a max yet. Because then that year at $5 million gives us time to let Rubio's contract, if we want to keep him a whole nother year, fade away. But we can't pay.
I think what's really interesting about talking about the Nuggets is, so they just traded for Gordon, which makes things super confusing. And to me, it tells me that they're in a win now mode. So they might not be entering trade stuff yet, but I think the process is really accurate. Like, I think there's a lot of teams that would be interested in a deal like that. But for me, I just don't think the Nuggets would be one of them. I love Porter. If we got Porter here tomorrow, I'd buy a jersey. He's one of my favorite players in the league. You know, you guys know me. I love Jokic too. I'm a closet. I kind of root for the Nuggets, but I just think that with that trade, they've entered into a win now mode, at least for the next 2 years. So I don't think that we could do a deal with them, but another team, I couldn't name one off the top of my head, but I don't
know if there's many players that I would trade that top pick value for. Again, I don't love this draft. And if you give me Evan Mobley, you give me a lineup of Beasley's now off the bench. You give me a D'Lo, Edwards, Jaden McDaniel at the 3 because that's where I like him. You give me Evan Mobley at the 4, and you give me Cat. That is a long, athletic, defensive team that still has offensive upside that I think would be a monster. I would love that team. But I just don't know if they're going to bring in another young guy. I don't know if that's the way that we're trying to go with this roster.
Here's the thing about that, though. If you had the roster you just described, you have three of those players on rookie contracts, and you have one coming off the bench who is on Michael Beasley, who is on a very favorable contract as well. So in that scenario, you have some very good contracts and maybe a little wiggle room to do with shore up the bench a little bit. And
we'd have to move Rubio.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which I think we'll do either way.
Yeah,
so I can move Rubio and bring back not much money. I think, we got to clear that money. It's just too much money. I love Rubio, but you can't have 50 million at point guard.
Right.
I'll ask you guys a question before we move on to the next topic. So if the Timberwolves were to get the 3rd overall pick, which I believe would be a projected Evan Mobley, which is my favorite player in the draft. I know Chris has talked about it multiple times, and I actually kind of agree with him. I don't love the talent in this draft. I watched a little bit of Gonzaga this past week, and Jalen Suggs is a very, very fundamental player. He's a very solid player. He can shoot well, but I don't think he offers the type of upside like a guy that Anthony Edwards did. Like Edwards was super raw. I don't think Suggs is as raw of a player. So I'm kind of not all that interested in him, and he obviously probably wouldn't fit with our team that well. But Mobley is a guy that would, and I watched that game, and even in the blowout, Mobley looked really, really good. He's very, very versatile. He can dribble the ball. He can even shoot a little bit on the perimeter, but he's more of an on-the-block, very, very long, athletic guy. I believe he led the NCAA in blocks per game this season. I'd have to double-check that, but I think I heard that stat. So my question for you guys would be, if we draft at the 3rd overall pick, would you rather move a potential Evan Mobley and Ricky Rubio for somebody else, or would you rather make that pick? And I think I know the answer to a couple of your guys' opinions, just because I think we do need to get rid of the Rubio money while we have it, because I think it could be very beneficial in a trade scenario. But I would almost lean towards drafting Evan Mobley, which would make us extremely, extremely young, and we're already young.
Well, for me personally, I mean, you say a player, but you would have to be a can't miss like prospect. Like it would have to be like a Ben Simmons or an Aaron Gordon or someone that is an absolute sure thing, because I don't think that Rosas could look Timberwolves fans in the face if he traded away a potential star like Evan Mobley. Like, let's say that he pans out and plays really well. So I think it would have to be for a sure thing. But what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, without knowing the player, it's hard. That's why I put in Porter Jr., because I was looking through it, and there's not that many guys that check that box. Like we have, I mean, and this sounds ludicrous to say since we're so bad, but we have so many pieces in place already. Like we have a starting point guard, we have a starting center, we have a starting 2 or 3 in Edwards. We have, at the very least, a really quality 6-man in Beasley, if not a starting 2 guard. So, like, we don't have a ton of holes to fill, high-level holes, starting holes. So, and again, I'm sorry I'm saying that for the worst team in the league, but yeah, it'd have to be a home run guy.
I think, and this is probably a bad example, but one player that came to mind just now was Jeremiah Grant, and the Detroit Pistons signed him to a massive deal, and it was a massive deal, and it was like a 5-year contract. But I also think that the Detroit Pistons are entering tank mode. And they I mean, if you ever look at some of the lineups that they run out, it's like, what are they doing in the NBA? Like they're bad. I don't care what anybody says, we blow the Pistons out. But the Pistons are extremely bad. So if you gave them potentially 2 top 3 picks and maybe give them Rubio and something else, it'd probably take a little bit more to get a guy on a deal like that with Jeremiah Grant, because it is a big contract and it's long length. But that's a guy that I would maybe target.
I don't think it would take that much to get him. I mean, he's good. He's 27. He's making $20 million a year. It's a 3-year, $60 million. Yeah, that's a lot of money. I think maybe I don't think you'd have to give a top pick for him. He's great, and I think he was the perfect fit next to Cat. I loved him. I just at that contract price, it's hard. So I think what I would do is I think I might stick with Mobley. I mean, if it's not going to be a Michael Porter Jr. or a Ben Simmons, I think it's like, well, we're going to go we're going to have 2 players in McDaniels and Mobley that are, have a 13-foot wingspan each and are fast. They can switch and cover a 2 guard, and they can block shots at the rim, and they can each play. I mean, they can each pass, they can each shoot. Like that would be that would be a nightmare for teams to go up against defensively. I would probably keep it. And maybe make a move to rid us. I mean, to rid us of a guy like Wancho and Culver, which would get us under the luxury tax, and maybe just let Rubio roll for a whole nother year as the mentor for these young guys, and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. So something that I kind of want to bring up. Do you and I know. So first of all, I know that you guys like him. Like I know you guys both like D'Angelo Russell. But so what would it take for you to say goodbye to D'Angelo Russell? Like is there like a player in mind, or in your mind? Do you think that there's anybody that you would, or not anybody, but what would be the right scenario, do you think, for the Wolves to move on from D'Angelo Russell and maybe pair Towns with someone else? I'm not saying it's the right move, but do you think there's a scenario out there where you do it? Like, what do you think, Chris?
I mean, there's always a scenario.
Right.
I'm the kind of GM where absolutely everybody's always on the block for me. The right price, just some people are just more expensive than others. But the thing about D'Lo is, who are you going to find that is a point guard that can affect the game when he's playing well, affect the game he can. I mean, what's he, 24 right now? Former All-Star. I mean, you're going to have to find a guy that's an electric point guard, and a team willing to trade him. Like, I'm not trading him unless I have a guy that's a proven electric point guard. Like, if you told me that you got the number 1 pick and we drafted Jalen Suggs for D'Lo, I would hate that, because and I figured out when I was watching Suggs last time, I figured out why I don't like him, and it's the same reason I don't like Kobe White. He's got alligator arms. He's got I think he's 6'5" with like a 6'5" wingspan, one of those kind of guys. Where like in the NBA right now, if you're 6'5", you got to have like a 6'9" wingspan, 6'10" wingspan as like a guard. So between his lack of athleticism, like explosiveness, and his short wingspan, that's what really makes him, I don't think, going to be effective. But it's going to have to be someone. I mean, I'm talking like John Morant style, like electric point guard. I'm going to have to know that I'm plugging a guy in there and he's going to be my point guard for 7 years and he's going to be a running mate with Cat. I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
Well, I got a scenario that just kind of popped into my head, and you guys can let me know what you guys think on this scenario. So to me, D'Angelo Russell is basically untouchable. And it has a lot to do with keeping Cat here. Cat is here, and he hasn't like publicly said that he's happy, but he was real happy to play with his best friend. So I think that's a big thing with D'Angelo Russell. I also think he's a phenomenal basketball player. But trade scenario, if we were willing to move him, I would want Darius Garland, Larry Nance Jr., and a first-round pick. And you guys can tell me what that would do for you.
If you could give me Sexton instead of Garland, I would think about it. That was the one trade that I heard for Cat that I really liked, when it was Jared Allen, Sexton, and their number 1 pick, which is going to be top 5. That was the kind of thing I would think about for Cat. But yeah, I would need Sexton. I like Garland. He's just a little smaller, and he's actually played pretty bad since he's come back from being hurt, or pretty average. I would need someone more explosive.
Yeah. I would definitely rather have Sexton as well. Like Chris, you were saying, I think he's a more electric player, and I just think he's a more of a sure thing. But I don't know. It depends, because like that pick could be valuable, because the Cavs are going to be bad for a pretty long time, unless, like we say, Garland and Sexton really turn the corner. But I don't know. I don't know if I would do that one. Hold
on 1 second. I just thought, now we have 2 top 3 picks. Now you go Rubio, you go 2 top 3 picks in Culver and maybe Beasley, and that might get you Ben Simmons.
That's
so now
true.
if you told me you move D'Lo, if you said D'Lo, Beasley in our pick, and we get Culver, or we get Garland and Ben Simmons, now I don't know. Like now that's something that's yeah. I mean, and you know what? I guarantee you, Rosas has had it run through his mind.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's what I love about Rosas. He seems like someone who's always trying to make the team better. So speaking of good teams, this is kind of my random question for the week, per se. Let's do this. Who is one team, including this year, that you guarantee will win a championship in the next 5 years? Like, I know it's hard to absolutely do a guarantee will win a championship, but who is one team that you guarantee will probably win one in the next 5 years? And I guess I'll go first. I'm gonna go. I think the Brooklyn Nets will do it this year. I think they have 7 current or former All-Stars on their team. Like I think that if the team stays together, I think Brooklyn's going to get at least one. And what about you? What about you, Jared? Who's one team you guarantee or are pretty sure will win a championship in the next 5 years?
I'm gonna take the cop-out answer because I talk about them all the time. I'm gonna take the Denver Nuggets solely because I love the way their roster is built. Jamal Murray is a very capable point guard. You have Nikola Jokic, who I say this every week, he's still my MVP. And you have Michael Porter Jr., who is a young talent, and you've also added Aaron Gordon, even though it might be part-time. Keep an eye on whether or not he gets moved or re-signed. Or I don't know how long his contract is. Chris would probably know off the top of his head.
1 more year.
Okay, so they're in win-now mode for 2 years. So that would be my team that I would be looking at to win a championship within the next 5 years. I also think that the Celtics are only getting into their prime. I just can't pick them right now because they always find a way to lose.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Chris, who do you got? And it can be the same as someone else. Just one team that you think will win a championship in the next 5 years.
I mean, the Lakers, they're winning it this year.
Really?
They've got, oh my God, Andre Drummond. Like, people are sleeping on Andre Drummond. Like, he might have lost a toenail, but this kid
I was just going to ask you if you guys saw that because that was ridiculous. He's at halftime. Just to catch up for people who didn't see this because it was hilarious to me. I was actually watching this game at work, and all of a sudden Andre Drummond is going to like put his shoe on, and he can't get his shoe on, and Harold's got his leg wrapped up, and Harold kind of looks at him like, "Are you going in or am I going in?" And Drummond kind of looks at him, and he holds up his toenail to the camera of ESPN, and it's like my toenail fell off at halftime, basically. And I laughed so hard at it because it was like, God, this guy he just can't stay healthy. I mean, he's been kind of healthy, but like it was so ironic. The first game, that he's with the Lakers, dude's toenail falls off, and then in the third quarter he plays for like a minute, then he walks to the locker room, and I'm like, Jesus criminy. I'm like, this guy just can't get it right. But before I let you go on, Chris, Andre Drummond is a very, very solid basketball player who has led the league in rebounds consistently, I think, for the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is. So the one thing that Anthony Davis, for some reason, hates to do is play center. And it's the one thing that when he doesn't play center gives the Lakers a huge advantage because with LeBron at whatever position you want to call him, Anthony Davis and a center, which was, Dwight Howard, they're so big. They're so big. They're such good rebounders, and they're all smart basketball players. Drummond is super smart. He's always one of the league leaders in steals. The last couple of years, he's been blocking shots. The guy shoots, 50% from the field, like 15 rebounds a game. The guy's a monster. And you add that next to Anthony Davis, and I don't know who's going to try to who is going to even have a chance to slow that down. Like, how are you going to stop those? Those guys are monsters. Like,
the
yeah, they might. And
the
then
only
they've
team
got
is the Nuggets because they're the only team big
Right, and I love the Nuggets. The Nuggets have been. There's a period of time when I stepped away from the Wolves when Tibbs was running it, and the Nuggets and the Sixers were my two teams that I watched consistently. I love everything the Nuggets have done for the last like 5 years. But I mean, with Drummond in there, it's gonna be a bloodbath down low. And then you've got Schroeder, who is lightning quick. Like that guy can get to the hole on anybody. It's gonna be fun. Like I think the Lakers. I think everyone's sleeping on the Lakers, and I think it's very possible they're gonna run away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's very possible. I don't know. I think it depends. It definitely depends on the health of LeBron and Anthony Davis if they come back. I mean, there's nothing indicating so far that LeBron won't come back at LeBron form, but who knows? Maybe it's possible. But so yeah, let's look at the week ahead tomorrow, or I guess when you're listening to it, or depending on when you listen to it. Probably you're listening to it on Saturday. So tonight the Wolves are at the 76ers. Then we are home against the Kings. Then we are on the road against the Pacers on Wednesday, and then on the road against the Celtics. Now, here, let me throw this. Would you trade the number one? Let's say, would you trade D'Angelo Russell for De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah,
you would. Oh, okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's close. Yeah, I probably would. Because, well, man, shooting
it's
is
close, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in the same. I think I like Russell more than a lot of people. That's why I think it's close. I think most NBA fans would say it's a no-brainer. They would take Fox. I just value D'Angelo Russell's three-point shooting so much more, and I haven't been following Fox so close. I know he's stepped it up, but Russell can just get so hot. I mean, of course, Fox, just averaged like 35 points for the week or whatever, a month or something, but it'd be close. Yeah, I mean, I would do it. Sure. I mean, I wouldn't not do it. I definitely consider it.
For sure. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because I saw the Kings. We were talking about potential, like you said, like point guards that can bring it, and I thought maybe
that would be a good call.
Yeah. All right. So Sixers, Kings, Pacers, Celtics. Do you guys see a win in there, or what do you guys think?
Pacers.
Okay. I could see the Kings as well. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Gabe.
No. I was just. I don't know. I don't know what to think about the Kings because they always seem to be like right there. Like always like, okay, we have Buddy Hield, we have De'Aaron Fox, we have some pieces. Let's make a run. And then they never make a run. So what were you going to say, Jared?
So I got 2 wins, which might surprise some people and it might surprise myself when I say this, but we're going to beat the 76ers.
Wow.
Because they don't have Embiid, and Embiid is Cat's kryptonite, or so some people seem to believe. We're going to beat the 76ers. They're super banged up. They're running out guys like Tony Bradley and Dwight Howard. Neither one of them, I think, can run with Cat on the perimeter. So if Cat makes some shots, we should absolutely win that game, solely because of a matchup-based standpoint.
I think Embiid is back. I think Embiid's supposed to be back tomorrow. I heard that tonight.
We'll have to keep an eye on him then. But that would obviously change a lot of how I think. But I'm assuming that Embiid is going to be out still, just because I haven't heard anything about it. But I also haven't looked into it. But I also think we're going to beat the Kings as well. The Kings seem to be they kind of play like us. Like they play fast, they score a lot of points, they shoot a lot of threes, they do a lot of little things right. Do I think it's kind of crazy to like talk about games coming up and think who can defend Cat, but I don't think Rashawn Holmes can defend Cat on the perimeter as well. And a lot of that has to do with, I think both of the players on other teams that I mentioned, I absolutely think can defend him in the post. Maybe not to an extreme rate, but they're bigger bodies and they have a hard time running with a guy like Cat who can shoot on the perimeter. So I think that we can win that game. Whoever said the Pacers, I think that was you, Chris. I feel like that is the one team we cannot beat. They always play us super, super tough. Sabonis seems to always have a near triple-double against us. Maybe Jaden McDaniels gets into him a little bit of combination of Reed and McDaniels and Van. I don't know if Vanderbilt's even been playing lately.
Vanderbilt played. Yeah, I think in the last 5 games he's had 12 total minutes. It's very strange happening with him.
Which is like when we talked about trade deadline scenarios, that's something that we kind of talked about as well. But yeah, so I think we can beat the 76ers. I think we can beat the Kings. I think the 76ers game will be a lot lower scoring. Kings game, you're going to see a shootout and you're going to see who can make more threes. And I hope to God Buddy Hield doesn't just go nuts on us because he's the type of player that can beat us.
Right. And at the end of the day, even if we lose all of them, who cares? We're a next year team anyway. Exactly. we just want to see these players play together and get in their roles and get ready for next season. Anyway, well,
we're supposed to have D'Lo back next week, Finch said. He said he's going to be back next week. So I just want to see him healthy in a uniform.
Right, absolutely. And we'll probably break down his performance next week if we get to see some of his performance. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Chris, thanks for being with us.
No problem, man.
And Jared, thanks as always.
It's always a pleasure to talk Wolves for an hour with you guys, no matter how bad we are.
Absolutely. And things are looking up, but this is the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Spotify so you never miss an episode. And as always, go Wolves.